Hey Curious Bunch, how are you? Our last live show was on photography, and here's a short snippet of it. Enjoy!
So, Krisi, you want to be the expert now and talk about your next picture?
Up until somebody yeah
Interrupts you and tells you, but yeah,
interrupts it.
I'll put it on full screen and you still have the voice,
Okay,
so
just
go.
just quickly. Okay, awesome. So currently you can see two pictures and they've been taken one after another, but with different settings. Actually, over the week I was posting in Facebook some kind of challenges with different photos and different settings. If you can guys notice and just give us comments about if you know how this picture is taken and all that. So here you can see because we talked about Aperture before that, and here you can see one of the applications of the Aperture setting or so-called Aperture priority setting. Um, I don't know what. Sorry, I
Yeah,
don't
we still
know.
hear you. What's happening?
Okay. So the picture on the left, you can see how the tower. This is my university, by the way. Promote. You can see how the tower of the university is blurred, but um, the flower, which is in front, is very sharp. Um, and on the picture on the right, you can both see the tower and the flower visibly into focus. And I have put on also the aperture the settings, and you can see that the main difference in the settings that I was using was the aperture. So once you make the aperture very wide, very like a small number, which makes a very like big size, and you let a lot of light in,
Mm-hmm.
you get only the closest details on very sharp focus, but you get everything else blurred. And that's how professional photographers are making good portraits, because this is a great way to distinguish between the person in front and all the background and get it blurred and nice.
But you can
Currently,
also
you have
see that the
yeah.
speed is different, right? So you have to do it with a slower speed. Uh,
Yes, because this, if you do it with the same speed, if you do 1 second with a lot of, because the speed is again related to how much light you are recording. Think about again for the
mm-hmm.
bucket if you want to. So if you have bigger bucket, which corresponds to 3.5 aperture size, if you have a bigger bucket, you just don't let it stay for that long. Otherwise, you'll get um, a very pre-exposed photo, very light photo. So you need to compensate one or the others. And depending on the situation, you decide which one you want to use, which one you want to
Mm-hmm.
prioritize.
Now, the thing that confused me about this is like I can't figure out why this is actually happening, like from the thin lenses that we've studied in high school. Like, why, if you have a large aperture, things are blurred, and if you have small aperture, I mean, I'm talking about the small and big, as in like the amount of light that gets in, not the number. The number is obviously the opposite.
Mhm.
But if you have a large opening, why do you have blurred background? I cannot figure it out. Anybody wants to
Basically
jump
it's
in?
because it breaks in all that we used in high school that we did in geometric optics. It uses one approximation, and that's the the small angles approximation, which means that the first the lens is very thin,
Mm-hmm.
and second the mm, actual rays that form the image are very close to the central optical axis, which is
Yeah,
the
yeah.
yeah determined by the lens. Is the central optical axis.
Mm-hmm.
If you increase that, actually the way the light is bent by the lenses changes a little bit. So the actual focal plane is not a plane anymore. It's like a thick barrier. So when you wait, did that make sense?
Can I tune in?
Go.
Yes. Yes,
Okay, I
please.
will send a link of a pic. Maybe it would be an analogy actually.
Okay.
I'm sending a link in the chat in YouTube. This is basically the picture of how do you have a focal point and basically 8th grade stuff. But imagine the lens was smaller or bigger, and at the focal point when the two rays meet, there is an angle. And if you have a smaller angle and smaller lens, then if you move forward to the lens or backwards to the lens around the focal point, it will, the image will be blurred less than with a bigger lens. Does that make sense? Can
Where
you
did you send the
actually
image?
open the
Yeah, because I
on
don't.
the YouTube chat?
I don't see it there.
I will send it in the internal
Okay,
chat also.
that's good. All right.
Did you
Let
see
me
that?
try. Yeah.
Yeah, and
So
I will repeat.
okay,
Yeah,
we're
so
there now.
you see at the focal point, the two of the rays meet at certain angle.
Yeah.
And if you have a smaller lens, which is not with a smaller diameter,
Like the diameter, the D here. So it's thinner.
no, not D. D is the thickness, but
Uh-huh.
the diameter of the lens, like the height.
Right. Okay. So this thing. Uh-huh.
If it was smaller, that
Yeah.
would basically mean that you have smaller numerical
Angle.
aperture at the focal, yeah, smaller angle.
Uh-huh.
And so if you move around the focal point
You get
towards
blurred
the
very
lens or
quickly, right?
in the other direction, it
Yeah.
will not blur as quickly as here. Yeah, exactly. And if you have a bigger lens, it will you will have a bigger angle and the image will become blurred quicker.
But they will meet at the same focal point, right?
Yes, the focal point remains the same. And basically, when you have an aperture, you have some ring that can change its diameter and it can reject some of the rays that are coming at higher angles.
But basically, like what I understand is that if you have like blurry, that means that some rays are focusing here and some rays are focusing here.
Yeah,
Like a
basically
little bit before and after the focal point.
Exactly, you can't distinguish because, like Vasco said, two things are defining your resolution: the optical part of the camera and the sensor itself. So if it's a little bit blurry, but not blurry enough so that it goes out of the size of the pixel, you will still think that it's on focus. Does that
Okay,
make
yeah.
sense?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like your eyes kind of lie to you that it's still on focus even though it's not.
Like if you zoom, if you have the picture and then you zoom in, then you may see it's blurred a little bit, I would say.
Yeah, but you can't zoom, or you could zoom and then it would look blurred. But
No, I mean like
if
digitally zooming.
yeah, if you have a really high aperture and a really tiny hole, lots of the rays will be really almost parallel. So the distance that looks like in focus is much larger. This is called depth of field. As I remember.
Oh, that's depth of field that we're
Yes.
Yeah,
me and
this
Dani
is
that's
were
depth of
exactly
trying
field.
what
to
I'm
figure
trying
out.
to understand.
Yeah. No, that definitely makes sense because the way you, when I, for example, the photo, if you're going back to the photos, I would manually put the focus. I would focus in such way that the flower would be on focus. But then everything around it would be all of the other rays. And if I have like if I have the smaller lens, that means that a lot of the other rays, because of the small angles, are still close to be perceivable as focus, as opposed to with the bigger lens, they're just way too off. So everything around is just really, really, really off focus.
Have to see
Dani
it like
looks like he's not convinced.
I'm just I
No.
can't imagine it exactly. Probably like there is this website where you can play with lens. I tried searching for something
Can
like
you
that,
can
but
you
I couldn't find it.
open
Let's say it
again?
like this. If you have a perfect lens, ideal lens,
Yeah.
every image that it forms
Is
will
on-
be infinitely sharp.
Yeah.
No matter where it is, if we have a perfect lens that works perfectly, infinitely thin, and blah 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 blah. So what you see, the two green lines, it's not gonna be like a depth of field. It's gonna be just like one plane,
Yeah.
where everything is perfectly focused.
Mm-hmm.
So everything will be perfectly focused. The closer are we to the ideal lens, the better our approximation of the
Okay.
physical lens is to that lens.
Yeah.
By shrinking the aperture,
Uh-huh.
you're getting closer and closer to the small angle approximation.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
more and more of the things
That's a
look
good one.
better in focus.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. That's good. Yeah. Because then when you expand the aperture, you're actually seeing the physics. Nice. Okay. Whew. I'm glad I'm talking with you guys. That was good. Thanks.
We should rename
Glad to
this
get you
series.
excited.
Explain this to Dani.
This should be the name of the show. Dani trying to understand stuff. All right.
Thank you for watching this. If you liked it, make sure you click the bell button so you stay notified about our live shows, usually every Thursday at 6 p.m. Universal Time. See you there!